Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm in the office Monday night. Let's jump into an episode of California Gangster. We're going to go scene by scene through all three novels about the Los Angeles Syndicate that I wrote. We're in the first novel. It's been titled California Gangster. I'm open to other ideas, but let's just pick up where we left off. I got some chamomile tea. I got my white fedora. It's not so white anymore, I guess. And of course I got the Mac. We're going to do a murder. That's what tonight's reading is about. So get ready. If you don't like violence, don't watch this video. Our main character, Simon Castro, is going to make his bones tonight. You can go watch the last episode. I do this every Monday. We're going to just go every Monday and do an episode and get through all three books and see how long it takes. And he's out with his uncle, and Simon's going to go make his bones. So let's just pick up where we left off. I walked up to the building and opened the skinny black metal door next to the Chinese restaurant. I gave a nervous inspection of what lay ahead and then proceeded upstairs to the apartment above. It was a cool downtown night, however. I felt like the air was getting hotter with every step that I took up that dark, narrow staircase. My hands were sweating with my heart, and my heart was beating like a John Bonham drum solo. I could smell the stench from the active kitchen downstairs and hear the yelling of their cooks through the thin walls as they furiously worked over their hot woks. The place smelled awful. I wondered if they were cooking those giant rats that I saw out in the back alley. The local Chinese places served a different menu from the tourist ones, so I figured it was a strong possibility. My pistol was clutched tightly in my right hand. My finger was resting on the trigger as I was slowly climbing each noisy step. I got to the top and looked down a short, dimly lit hallway with two doors opposite each other. Uncle Frank forgot to tell me which apartment the guy was in. He didn't even mention a second unit. I stood there in a panic, not knowing which door to knock on. I had to quickly make a decision, so I knocked on both of the doors and figured that I would just shoot whomever answered first. I knocked on both doors lightly. I could hear the locks on one door being unchained, and then it opened. My hands gripped the pistol, and my finger was on the trigger ready to pull as soon as the barrel was raised. It was answered by an ancient-looking Chinese lady, easily in her 90s or older. And she seemed to speak no English whatsoever. She was wearing a thin, dirty-looking off-white nightgown. The TV she had in her room was blasting, and she was jabbering in Chinese at me in some high-pitched voice. I stood in the hallway, confused, not knowing what to do. I still had the pistol in my hand, holding it down by my side, hoping that she wouldn't notice my ill intentions. I smiled politely to her and said, "Sorry, wrong apartment." Just then, the other door swung open swiftly. A heavily tattooed, muscular Chinese dude was looking right at me. His head was shaven clean and he had a towel around his waist. His legs were dripping wet, and his eyes were wide with fear as he stood in his doorway. I recognized that look from my opponents on the football field back when I played with USC. The Chinese gangster looked down at my pistol and then suddenly ran back inside his apartment. I followed and saw him dart towards the back of the room next to a dresser by the window. He grabbed a gun, turned, and fired right at me. Luckily, it was pitch black in the room and he completely missed me, hitting the wall next to me. I ran towards him as fast as I could and fired one single shot in his direction. I hit him in the chest, opening him up like a can of worms. I stood in the middle of his dark apartment with the streetlights shining through the small window, stunned at what I had just done. I quickly snapped out of my daze, realizing that he was still moving. The fucker was still alive. He tried to stand up, clutching his chest, but he fell back against the wall. He slid down the wall to the floor, leaving a trail of blood behind his path. I felt calm in that moment for some reason. It was like the whole world had slowed down. I walked over to the Chinese triad member, gave him a sinister grin. I stepped a little closer to him, pointed my pistol at his head. He looked at me dead in my eyes as I slowly pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet went right through his forehead, turning his lights out. Blood from his skull was spilling down his body onto the wooden floor, creating a large pool around him. I leapt over his corpse out into the hallway. The old Chinese lady was still standing there and looking right into my eyes. And I felt like I had no choice. No witnesses, right? So I quickly shot her in her head, blew her brains out. With eyes frozen open in horror, she dropped to the ground like a small sack of rice. For some reason, I don't know what got into me, I went back into the triad man's apartment just to see if he had any money or drugs that I could steal. I figured a guy of his status in the triad must have something good stashed away. And it was time for me to get paid. I quickly searched his room for anything I could find. I turned over the mattress and saw a large brown paper bag under the bed. I grabbed it, happy to find some sort of booty, and left the place as fast as possible. The end of the hallway was filling with blood from the old lady whose body was laying in the doorway. I leapt down the hall like a track star in the Olympics to avoid stepping in blood and leaving any footprints. I ran down the dark staircase, taking 4 steps at a time with my long legs. I came flying out of the skinny metal door back into the alleyway, frantically looking for my Uncle Frank. He was still in the car eating the last slice of pizza. I jumped in the vehicle and Frank hit it into reverse out of the parking space. As we pulled off, 2 Chinese triad members came running out of the small restaurant with Uzis in their hands. They raised their barrels and began spraying bullets widely down the dark alley at us. As we turned the corner onto the street, luckily avoiding the hailstorm of bullets, Frank said in an annoyed tone, "Simon Castro, I promise you in front of God that I will pull over and push you out onto the sidewalk and leave your fat ass here if one of those motherfucking bullets even grazes this brand new Cadillac." I gave a smile to my uncle and said, "I'm not fat. You are. Try it and see what happens." All right, we'll stop here. More next Monday.